Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we take one of the greats of cinema history and we examine their work through 5 of their best films. Their range, their diversity, their skills. My name is Austin Luger.
My name is Ray Martindale.
And we're now on our third person that we're covering, the brilliant director Akira Kurosawa. We are reviewing this week Ikiru. Last week we reviewed Rashomon. The next ones in the 5 are The Seven Samurai, High and Low, and Ron. Ikiru is a lot different than Rashomon. Akira Kurosawa is kind of best known for his samurai films, like we did last week. But Akira Kurosawa had a very different tale to tell a couple years after that, which was about this bureaucrat who finds out he only has a few months to live. He's in modern society. And it's about how he reacts to that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, heartbreaking, and really inspiring tale. I don't like to use the word inspiring that often.
Yeah, Roger Ebert called Ikiru one of the few films that you could watch where it could genuinely change your life. Like, you could come out of Ikiru a different person than before. He also praised Ikiru as being Kurosawa's greatest film.
Right.
He was a proponent of that. A good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, our friend Bo, thinks that Ikiru is Kurosawa's best film and one of the 10 greatest films ever made. Ikiru, from the very opening, the first time I saw the film, it really drew me in. The opening shot is new for the time. Okay, this film was made in 1952. And to open up on a radiograph of someone's stomach as the opening shot. So it's literally just the radiograph. You see the x-ray up there, and it says, this is this man, and he has cancer. He's our protagonist, and he doesn't know it yet. And it starts to really judge him for being a bureaucrat, but without being too condemning. It just says, I mean, look at him here in his life as a bureaucrat, and he's surrounded with mounds and mounds and mounds of paper, and all he does is stamp the papers and send them on to the next person.
I was so impressed watching this film again with that opening, partly because you just don't see enough of the kind of God narrator as you see much in film. It's always a character, looking back or sometimes looking forward. It's just very curious to see this happen, and in such a judging way. Partly because, and the narrator is not there the entire film, he's kind of there for key moments, is kind of only there when the man can't speak up for himself.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's kind of like, it's completely different tonally and even structurally, but it's kind of like in It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey. We keep cutting back maybe to the narrator to when just the characters on screen doesn't suffice, but it never does it unnecessarily. It actually reminded me a lot of Little Children.
Right.
The way the voiceover works in Little Children, where again the voiceover is only there when you need the cement between the bricks, right? And I thought it's such a gripping opening. Just to show you the shot of cancer in someone's stomach and tell you this person's going to die. Before we have even met the person, I think every person out there has a fear of one day staring up at that X-ray and it being your X-ray, right? I mean, whether it's something you in subconscious or you think that consciously, you are immediately able to empathize with the character without even seeing him because you think, oh my goodness, that's horrifying. That's an X-ray of cancer in someone's stomach. What if that's me one day?
Well, it's also a way to just remove the shock value. This isn't going to be a twist where he dies at the end. He's saying, he being the narrator, this person is going to die. The point of the story is him recognizing this fact. So the audience also needs to recognize this fact, because then what do you do with that information?
Yeah.
What do you do when your life is limited and your days are now more precious than you ever realized? What do you do with that?
Which is essentially the through line of the film. But also the reason why this is so fascinating, and I know we're getting hung up in this opening moment here, but it actually it resonates to the entire film because the character isn't telling people that he has the disease. So because he doesn't tell people, and we're in the know, we're able to experience the story in a completely different way than obviously the characters around him are. I mean, sometimes you want to reach out on the screen and shake the people and say, "Can't you see the man's sick, for God's sakes?" But it works. It's so narratively satisfying to sit back and know something that the rest of the characters don't and experience it that way. This isn't a lot of times in films you're going to get it the other way around. The characters know something we don't know, and that then comes the shock value.
Right.
This is we know. This, and again, there's a manufactured empathy that feels immediately justified from the get-go, which I think works here in particular because Takashi Shimura, who plays Watanabe, the main character in the film, he's such a plain-looking man, which I think helps. He's just like he looks like a Japanese grandpa,
right?
Like it works so well.
And I think what's also brilliant about how this is done is jumping forward a little bit, and we're going to definitely jump back, but the way he learns it blew my mind because he's in the lobby because his stomach's been hurting at the doctor's office, and this man who's also in the lobby says, "You can't really trust what they're saying." Yeah. I had was it him or he had a buddy? He had a buddy. He had a buddy, and here they said it was just a small ulcer. Don't worry about it. It your appetite and that. But really, it's stomach cancer.
Yeah. They'll tell you. He says they'll tell you if they tell you can eat anything you want, that means you got 1 year left to live.
Right. And then he goes in there. Their doctor's looking somber, looking at radiographs, and says, "You know what? It's just a small ulcer." Yes. And he just puts his head on the table, knowing what's happening, and he says, "Do I need to change my appetite? As long as it's edible, you'll be okay. You can eat whatever you like." And he just puts his head back down. So you have a movie that says, "These are the facts. I'm going to respect you enough to kind of give you the honest truth." And then you have a doctor who I interpret it as the doctor assumes if you get that information, all you will do is live in misery.
Yeah.
And so the doctor decides to not trust or respect the patient and thinks it's better for you if you just kind of live your days normally and then you'll die.
Which is insane.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Makes you want to mistrust everyone.
And all of this would be fine as sort of a plot or sort of the through line of the film if that was the story the movie was interested in telling. But it has much larger plans for you as the audience member because it's going to use this now as a means to throw the book at establishment bureaucratic bullshit politics, which it throws one of the greatest indictments at in the history of film and one of the more effective montages you will ever see. You want to talk about the montage because it obviously gripped you because you texted me during it.
I did. Yes, I had seen this film a long time ago when I was in high school. I remembered a lot of key bits, but I remembered this montage almost perfectly from high school. One of my greatest annoyances in life is bureaucracy and the apathy it can cause. And there's no better example in cinema than these, I didn't even clock it, 8-10 minutes of this group of women who are upset that there's this awful sewage coming out of the park. This is like a universally bad thing. Yeah. And tries to go to the parks department. And they go, "Oh, no, you need to go to the sanitation department. Oh, no, you need to go to
the engineering department."
And it is they look right at the camera, and it's just a constant wave of people passing off to someone else because of a stupid footnote of a reason. And it just doesn't end.
They start sending these poor people to departments that you can't even, you can't believe there's even a department for that.
Right.
And which... It keeps going on and on. It's like I told you. It's I don't think Family Guy is particularly funny, but it's a show that's interested in telling that long con sort of joke where I'm going to present something to you that's going to shock you, might be disgusted at, and I'm going to keep forcing it on you until you're going to laugh.
Right.
And then you're going to keep doing it, and then you're going to go, is this still going on? And at that point, you're either going to be re-disgusted by it or you're going to laugh again.
Right.
That's kind of what the montage is here. Because I started out, I recognized the joke immediately, right, and laughed. And then 5 minutes went on. And I was like, it was a different laughter. Like,
Right.
oh my God, is this still going on?
Right.
And again, like you said, it's not like their request is unreasonable. If sewage is leaking into the park, this is a problem.
Right.
That needs to be solved.
Right.
But these people's jobs is to pass the buck off. Right? It's to stamp the papers and send them on. And this is what Watanabe has been doing and now he's the head of his department too. He's been doing this for 30 years at this point. So, one of my favorite scenes in the film is a shot of, you see it's, again, I'm going to reference him a lot because I think he's one of the greatest writers about criticism about films ever. He mentions it in his review, or his in writing on great movies. He says there's a shot of Watanabe in his bed, and he's crying silently, and the camera pans up to, on the wall, his award for 25 years of service. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
We didn't mention this last week, but when I think of like what is the greatest attribute of Kurosawa as director, it's his ability to frame a shot.
Yes.
And I mean, it's very. You can notice it really well in the samurai tales when you have this amazing moment, or you have 50 extras.
You don't have a
perfectly
choice
placed
in a samurai movie.
Right.
You're filming thousands of extras.
Yeah.
You need to be able to frame your shots well.
And yet he still has that exact amount of brilliant artistry for this very small, intimate tale. And going through these endless piles of paper and really playing with the editing, so you kind of now in these different scenarios that seem suffocating, and then later in the film curious and exciting and vibrant, or then goes back to just still dullness.
Two shots. Speaking of framing a shot, well, first of all, Seven Samurai, we'll get into that when we get to Seven Samurai, and Ron is probably the most obvious example of this.
Sure.
High and Low actually has some of the most famous thriller shots, I think, probably ever, which we'll get to as well. But Ikiru, is somewhere off in the corner in the darkness, framing some of the most beautiful shots in cinema history. There are two that really stand out in my mind. One is in the middle of the film. After Watanabe gets the news that he has cancer, he goes out and he drinks for the first time.
Right.
He meets a guy who they're both actors that Kurosawa used a lot. This guy would be later the most badass samurai in the Seven Samurai that he ends up meeting. And he drinks sake with him, and they go out. And they get drunk, and they're on the town, and you get an impression they're playing like ragtime music upstairs, and you can get this impression it's like an after party. It's like these are the people that the closing times played, and they just didn't kick them out, and they're upstairs like just totally drunk, and he seems out of place because he's a real stiff. He's got a coat on, his hat on. You got some ladies up there that are dressed provocatively, and they're younger. And then he requests, the piano player goes and he requests, and he says he suggests an old song, which is "Fall in Love, Dear Maidens, Life is Short." And the piano player says something really interesting there. He goes, "Oh, one of those 1920s songs."
1910s.
1910s, yeah, 1910 songs, which is inferring the age of the character as well, and how he's aged now. And this song is all about reflection on your life. The way Kurosawa frames the way the room starts to react, because they've been playing this raucous ragtime music, and then they go to this very slow, methodic piece, beautiful, beautiful melody, and Watanabe starts to sing. And he barely even opens his lips. And all the couples have run up to slow dance, and then they immediately stop, and they sort of look at Watanabe, and the camera sort of pans around him, and you start to see everyone's sort of reaction as they turn to this old man who might otherwise be forgotten as he sings this really sad song about fall in love when you're young, and you can appreciate it because one day you're going to be old, and tomorrow's not going to come. And the way everyone reacts to him as the camera sort of goes around him, and then finally lands on his face, and his new friend he's met that night just staring at him, you can see that everyone is reflecting on their life to this point and whether their life actually meant something. And then the camera then just zooms right up on Watanabe's face again, his lips barely moving as his eyes slowly well up in tears and slowly pour down from his eyes. It's that whole thing is one of the most beautiful scenes in film history.
And Shimura, who plays the main guy, he was also in Rashomon. He was the woodcutter. Mm-hmm. This guy, I mean, he looks kind of sad and horrified throughout Rashomon because he is disgusted by the events that have happened. This one, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and then Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
He's got big range.
Yes. And this, it is just incredible because he has these interactions, and, you know, while we're talking right now, I keep thinking about a film that I actually haven't seen, but I saw the trailers for it. The Bucket List.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of Ebert, he eviscerated this film.
It's one of the worst films I've ever paid money to see.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it's almost the opposite of Ikiru, it seems like.
Yes.
Whereas this looks for pure human connection and human emotion within. This one has them jumping out of airplanes and dumb shit, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have these moments where Watanabe he meets this guy at the bar who is brilliant. This guy, he's self-described as a slacker. He is kind of unsure where to go in his life, but he knows, where to have fun. Yeah. He knows where to have liveliness, but he was still drinking alone in a bar this night. He was almost about to call it a night, but it's like he found this man and he wants to connect with this man.
Yeah.
It's not pity, it's just like we're all in this together in a way.
Kind of like The Apartment in that way.
Of course.
The way that we all, on a fundamental level, we're social beings.
Sure.
We need each other, and we rely on one another. And it's funny, interesting you mentioned the bucket list, because even the title of the movie betrays what theme it should have actually been pursuing. Mm-hmm. Ikiru is translated to live. Mm-hmm. Bucket list...
It's about kicking the bucket.
It's about kicking the bucket.
Right.
And it's a film about... Because the thing about a bucket list is not something you can actually do. We put things on our bucket list, but it's almost metaphorical. When the point of Ikiru, and I think the point of this is, in times of self-reflection, we can appreciate our life, and we can appreciate the wonderful things about our life, or the horrible things about the life, the things that made us, and in those moments, we won't take it for granted. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, a day before, he was a man that didn't have cancer, and he didn't have these problems in his head, and he was, of course, taking it for granted. Bucket List exploits the tragedy. Ikiru acknowledges it. And
another one of the connections he makes is with a young employee that also worked there. She kind of recently quit. But this is kind of this beautiful little moment that she has where they're talking, and she kind of goes, "Oh, you are like me. You do recognize this is all awful." Mm-hmm. Like, you can tell instantly that she's been going to this place for months and months, and just like feels like the only one in color in a black and white film.
But she's also youthful and young, so she hasn't had the horrors of the bureaucracy work on her yet and change her. And this is what attracts Watanabe to her, is her liveliness and her vigor. Mm-hmm. So he ends up spending a lot of time with her, and to the point where his son and a lot of other colleagues stops going into work. Mm-hmm. But his son starts to think that they're not going to get his money, the son and wife, because he's now going to blow it all on booze and women here at the end of his life. It's really pretty gross and disgusting.
Right.
But one scene in particular with her is when he's out with her one night, and she keeps looking back, because she is out with an older man. Mm-hmm. She keeps looking back, and she sees people, young girls her age, out alive and having fun, and she sort of a lust for that and wants that. And that's something he was trying to channel but can't quite attain. He doesn't know how to do it yet his own way, right? Which kicks into the later acts.
It's brilliant, because instead of being false and trying to do the things he can't, he then goes into... He kind of recognizes the strengths he has, the knowledge he has, the experience he's had, and uses that for something good.
Yes.
And it's really beautiful that we're going to say it, we talk about the whole film during this podcast. He's going to build this damn park.
Yeah, he's going to build the park, and he's going to fix this problem that these people had.
Right.
What I love about this is you have so much time until you don't have any time. Because now it becomes less about, because again, we knew that he was dying.
Yeah.
If you kept on that path and that trajectory for this where this shift comes is probably about, this is a 2-hour and 20-minute film.
Yeah.
This shift where we're heading off into, he's going to build that damn park, that hits probably around 120, 130 into the film. It's later in the movie. If you went longer on that term, it would be sad. But then there's a way to turn this into a victory. So we cut to the actual wake. Again, because
the narrator returns and says,
he's dead.
Died 5 months later.
Yep, he died.
And it's like, oh my god, because you just expect he's going to die at the end of the movie, kind of thing. And it's so beautifully done. Because now the time has run out. He can't speak for himself anymore. How does the rest of the world look at what he's done?
How do we judge a man's life?
Right. Here? And it's fascinating because the people who are talking are not the slacker or the employee or even really his kid. The kid's pretty silent for most of his part. It's just the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
And it's now they're causing reflection. And at first they're too steadfast in their ways.
They're saying the things that they are supposed to say at a wake. And then there is like a debate that kicks up whether he knew whether he was sick or not.
Right, because they almost don't want to. I feel that they're in denial a little bit.
Yeah.
Because also, if they knew he was sick, they're taking the credit away from him. And it's bullshit.
And they literally are taking the credit away from him. They're
Right.
saying that, is it the mayor?
It's the deputy mayor.
The deputy mayor is saying, yeah, I got that park built. So
Right.
now we know the park is built.
Right.
We know that he was found dead in the park that was built. And these things start to come out at the wake, and then eventually as these bureaucrats are getting drunk and talking about the story of him, they start to realize, oh, of course he knew he was sick. Oh my gosh, actually I saw him this one time. Oh my gosh, I saw him doing this. And they start to put the story together, and they start to, this reflection turns into this sort of bombshell of, oh my god, this man is transcendent. He beat the system. He beat the system.
Yeah.
And which you would think would inspire change or something like that, which I don't even think was something that Watanabe was actually even interested in. At the end of the day, he had to build that damn park. That's what he needed to do.
He had no interest in changing bureaucracy. He had no interest in changing people's minds. He wanted to build the park. He wanted to create something that would better other people's lives in a very direct way.
Yeah.
And also make him proud of his job. He's not trying to change his job. He's trying to do his job in the best way he never did. And that's incredible because everyone can do this.
Yeah.
Everyone can go beyond the call for a greater purpose and that human connection again. It's beautiful. And the film, I was worried on this view again that the film was going to end with them all drunk and saying we're all gonna Watanabe. We're all gonna do this. Next morning they sober up, they pass the buck again. Yeah, but they're a little bit aware.
There's one character that stands up at this table because now someone's replaced Watanabe and first of all. Or last of all, because we're getting later, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the guy's name. I don't speak Japanese. So, Watanabe is the character's name.
You're right.
Anyway, so someone has replaced him at the job, and he's just stamping the papers just like Watanabe did. And then someone says, hey, these people have this problem, and he says, send them to engineering department. And then he goes back to working, and then one of the men at the table stands up in protest, and everyone just looks at him like, shut up.
Yeah.
And get back in your seat. Not threatening, but you like your job, don't you?
Well, it's just what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Come on.
Yeah. And then he sits down. He does sit down there. And then the bureaucracy continues. There is, you have to mention this part of the film, is that there is a cut to the last night Watanabe was alive. And he is in the park. During this scene, this last 3 minutes, it pops up on the screen where he is now singing again the same song, "Fall in Love, Life is Short, Dear Maidens," and he's in the park he built on the swing, rocking back and forth, and the snow is falling, and it's just this beautiful scene of this happy dying man. I mean, he's literally going to be dead in hours. And if we flash back to earlier in the film when he's singing the song and he's weeping, and now we see him sing the song and he's smiling,
right?
And he can go now. He can now feel he can now die,
right?
Like he can feel like it was for something now. And then again, framing a shot, we cut back to the park and a couple kids swinging in the park, and that one employee that stood up in protest watches from the highway and walks by as the swing and what is one of the better final shots ever. This is a wonderful film.
Incredible. And looking at the way Kurosawa crafts his tale, we kind of talk so much about intention of these characters and whatnot. So much is unsaid. I mean, obviously, near the end, they're drunk at the bar and they're saying aloud these kind of things. But for so much of it, it is really up to Kurosawa's camera and Shimura as an actor to pull this off. And it is powerful.
You know, he doesn't use Shimura as much in his later films. He's always in the background somewhere. Yeah. Like it's kind of sad. I mean, he's the lead in Seven Samurai with Mifune, but he's never featured like he is certainly in Ikiru. And he was only 47 when he did the film. He comes off much older than that.
Oh, he definitely does.
Yeah, definitely. But it really is. Gosh. It never comes off as like exploiting our emotions. It never comes off as cheap. I remember there was a moment in you brought up Bucket List, but I think there's a lot of parallel you can draw with it in a bad way. The Bucket List, I do remember almost tearing up during that film when he said on his bucket list it was to kiss the prettiest woman alive, and then he sees his daughter for the first time, or his granddaughter for the first time, and kisses her, and then you see him mark it off the bucket list. I well up here knowing that I'm totally being exploited. I'm thinking,
right.
Exactly. Aw, that's so unbelievably cheap and bullshit, and it did make me do that. Which
I just rolled my eyes.
Which pisses me off even more. And I remember thinking that I hate that about the film, but it totally exploited my emotions in a way where this movie uses it in a completely different way. It takes tragedy and it turns it into it never exploits us, and it turns it into a positive. We are all going to die one day. This is acknowledged that this is how he's going to die. But can he make something of it before the end? Because it ends up being a race against time towards the end that works so brilliantly. But that race never starts until we know we're going to die.
Right.
And that's the tragedy in the film that's never exploited.
Because there's an amazing bit of uncertainty, and it's wonderfully foggy in a very human way. When he first gets the information, he's just in shock. He is so still as a performance, and the camera is very kind of still with him. And there's all these flashbacks. Again, the editing of this film is fascinating and so different from how Kurosawa typically operates. I mean, it's very jarring editing. And you see these kind of moments that are like, you see that his wife had died at a younger age.
Yes.
Never remarried. Never really kind of pursued love again. You see kind of moments where he's proud of his son, but you see a moment where he kind of let his son down, where he was too scared to go into the operating room with him. It's just kind of brilliant uses of memory, and it reminds me of how Richard Linklater frames Boyhood. That movie isn't filled with the prom or the first kiss and whatnot. It's about the weird things you remember. This is the memory of when you were 11. This is what you're thinking of.
It's interesting you say that. Springboarding off that is, so once the closer Watanabe gets to death, the further distance ends up getting driven between him and his son, because his son doesn't know that he's dying, which affects this, obviously, and leads to this. But he tells a story, Watanabe does, about when he was a child. Again, we don't see the memory, but he's relaying the memory to us of where he was drowning as a kid, and he wanted his parents to come and save him. And it took he felt like the distance from them might as well, and I don't know exactly how he explains it, but it might as well have been the distance between here and Neptune. And that same feeling he felt while he was drowning in the water is the same feeling he feels towards his son now.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
it's just wonderfully. I mean, it's just the movie is so well crafted, and this is the type of film. And when someone says to you, "What's your favorite Kurosawa film?" and it's easy to say Seven Samurai, and with good reason. Mm-hmm. Or any of the other films, a lot of the other films, Rashomon, I think, being another one. But the person that does say Ikiru, I think you kind of, even if you don't agree that it's like the best Kurosawa film, you do look at them in a more respected eye than you might.
Well, rewatch the movies for this podcast, and I've been saying for years that I think the best Kurosawa film is Ron. This viewing, I think Ikiru might have passed by. Well, in 3 weeks, we'll see if I change my mind again. But Ikiru is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful movie.
It's required watching. I know I've said this 1,000 times on the show. This is a movie that you can't tell a story of cinema without Kurosawa. You can't tell a story of Kurosawa without Ikiru. Obviously, Ikiru has a lot of things about a lot of themes in it about living and dying and death, particularly later in his life. But this is probably my favorite film about a doomed protagonist. Like, from the start, we're telling you, because a lot of films will tell you, all right, or we know they're going to die, and how do we get there?
Sure.
This is definitely my favorite one of that, and probably my top 3 Kurosawa film, and it may be number 1. It's like picking a favorite child, because he's like one of my favorite, if not my favorite director. He's one of my 3 favorite directors. So,
I think that wraps up our discussion of Ikiru.
Yeah, I think it does. I think that wraps it up. If you want to get a hold of us, you want to email us, you can email us on let's take 5 at theartimmortal.com. Let me try that again. Let's take 5 at theartimmortal.com. If you have an opinion on Ikiru or any Kurosawa film, you want to hit us up about the De Niro or Billy Wilder films that we have spoken about before. If you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can do it. Our handle is at the Immortals Pod. The Immortals is a podcast that Austin does with his merry crew where they review
the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must see before you die. Yesterday we had our 34th episode, where we reviewed the film Downfall, about the last week of Hitler's life. So very similar films.
And if you want to catch me, you can catch me on my YouTube channel. It's Constant Diversion. Constant Diversion, that's the YouTube channel, and that is where I apply hopefully some decent criticism about video games as well. So, I think that about wraps us up. Ikiru, it's pretty good.
I like it.
I like it. So I'm Eric Martindale.
I'm Austin Luker.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.